Cell structure, part one of two. At first glance, a factory is a puzzling place with diverse activities. However, if you take your time and watch carefully, what might at first seem like chaos begins to make sense. The same is true for a living cell. What is the role of a cell nucleus? The nucleus contains nearly all of the cell's DNA and, with it, the coded instruction for making proteins and other important molecules. The eukaryotic cells can be divided into two major parts, the nucleus and the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the fluid portion of the cell outside the nucleus. Prokaryotic cells have cytoplasm as well, even though they do not have a nucleus. Many cellular structures act as specialized organs. These structures are known as organelles, literally little organs. Understanding what each organelle does helps us to understand the cell as a whole. The eukaryotic cell is much like a living version of a modern factory. The specialized machines and assembly lines of the factory can be compared to the different organelles of the cell. In the same way that the main office controls a large factory, the nucleus is the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains nearly all the cell's DNA and with it, the coded instruction for making proteins and other important molecules. Nucleus here and here. The nucleus is surrounded by a nuclear envelope composed of two membranes. The nuclear envelope is dotted with thousands of nuclear pores, which allow material to move into and out of the nucleus. Like messages, instructions, or blueprints moving in and out of a main office, a steady stream of proteins, RNA, and other molecules move through the nuclear pores to and from the rest of the cell. Chromosomes contain the genetic information that is passed from one generation of cells to the next. Most of the time, the thread-like chromosomes are spread throughout the nucleus in the form of chromatin, a complex of DNA bound to proteins. When a cell divides, its chromosomes condense and can be seen under a microscope. Most nuclei also contain a small, dense region known as a nucleolus. The nucleolus is where the assembly of ribosomes begins. What are the functions of vacuoles, lysosomes, and cytoskeleton? Vacuoles store material like water, salts, proteins, and carbohydrates. Lysosomes break down lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins into small molecules that can be used in the rest of the cell. They are also involved in breaking down organelles that have outlived their usefulness. The cytoskeleton helps the cell maintain its shape and is also involved in movement. Many cells contain large sac-like membrane-enclosed structures called vacuoles that store material such as water, salts, proteins, and carbohydrates. In many plant cells, there's a single large central vacuole filled with liquid. The pressure on the central vacuole in these cells increases with rigidity, making it possible for plants to support heavy structures such as leaves and flowers. Vacuoles are also found in some unicellular organisms and in some animals. The paramecium contains an organelle called a contractile vacuole. By contracting rhythmically, this specialized vacuole pumps excess water out of the cell. Nearly all eukaryotic cells contain smaller membrane-enclosed structures called vesicles. Vesicles are used to store and move material between cell organelles, as well as to and from the cell surface. Lysosomes are small organelles filled with enzymes that function as the cell's cleanup crew. Lysosomes perform the vital function of removing junk that might otherwise accumulate and cluster up the cell. One function of lysosomes is the breakdown of lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins into small molecules that can be used by the rest of the cell. Lysosomes are also involved in breaking down the organelles that have outlived their usefulness. Biologists once thought that lysosomes were only found in animal cells, but it is now clear that lysosomes are also found in a few specialized types of plant cells as well. Eukaryotic cells are given their special shape and internal organization by a structure of protein filaments known as cytoskeleton, the green portion. Certain parts of cytoskeleton also help to transport materials between different parts of the cell, much like conveyor belts that carry material from one part of the factory to another. Microfilaments and microtubules are two of the principal protein filaments that make up the cytoskeleton. Microfilaments are thread-like structures made up of protein called actin. They form extensive networks in some cells and produce a tough, flexible framework that supports the cell. Microfilaments also help cells move. Microfilament assembly and disassembly is responsible for the cytoplasmic movements that allow cells, such as amoebas, to crawl along surfaces. Microtubules are hollow structures made up of proteins known as tubulins. They play critical roles in maintaining cell shape. Microtubules are also important in cell division, where they form a structure known as a mitotic spindle, which helps to separate chromosomes. In animal cells, structures known as centrioles are also formed from tubulins. Centrioles are located near the nucleus and help to organize cell division. Centrioles are not found in plant cells. Microtubules help to build projections from the cell surface, which are known as cilia or flagella. They enable cells to swim rapidly through liquids. Microtubules are arranged in a 9+2 pattern. This is the cross section of that microtubule, flagellum, or cilia. Small cross bridges between microtubules in these organelles use chemical energy to pull on or slide along. The microtubules allow cells to produce controlled movements. Connection between two tubules, cross bridge. It's 15 nanometer.